Imagine an alternate timeline where Five Nights at Freddy's never became a YouTube sensation.
I know a guy.
Where does he live?
We forgot to lock the perp in again.
This is the place.
What about Springtrap back at the office?
There were no gamers that played it, no theorists that dissected it, and no musicians that created for it. Would Five Nights at Freddy's still be as successful? While we may never know the answer, it still goes without saying that it wouldn't be as recognizably tied to the brands of other content creators. I made a video covering Markiplier's long-time relevancy on YouTube a while back, and in it I mentioned how a good portion of his initial audience stayed interested due to his frequent collaborations with other YouTubers. One such collaboration was none other than Five Nights at Freddy's, the musical, that brought together icons of the FNAF community into a reimagining of the fantastical world of Freddy's. Released back in 2016, this broke the internet with succeeding in bringing the game theorist, Markiplier and Natewantstobattle all under one roof. The musical is now almost 7 years old? God, I'm a boomer. Anywho, let's take a look at this chapter in FNAF's history and see if it holds up all this time later or not. There's some important notes to address though before we begin, that being most notably the appearances and designs of the animatronics. As anyone could have pieced together by the clips being played on screen, the titular roster of characters doesn't seem very robot-like in this adaptation. This element is something that had been an ick of mine when younger me first came across the musical. It felt like the immersion was shattered, so it's important for newer viewers to realize that this musical isn't the finest of cinema, because it was never meant to be.
Sorry, balloon boy.
Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hard work, blood, sweat and tears put into this by each person involved. But at the same time, it's also obvious that no one went into this project with a professional goal in mind. It's good fun and it works best when seen that way. So I'll be somewhat forgiving of the plot inconsistencies for this very reason. Although that still doesn't explain the animatronics. There still is an ongoing debate as to what Freddy and the gang are supposed to be. The musical itself hints at how their suits may be haunted and possessed.
The souls of the undead children keep talking to you.
Oh, would you shut up?
But to be honest, that's played off as more of a joke than anything, especially since they're literally called puppets as well. Yet, at other times it's also mentioned how the puppets contain wiring.
That's fine. Looks like someone burned out its wiring almost a decade ago.
So, my best guess is that Freddy, Chica, Bonnie and Foxy aren't actually haunted. In fact, I believe them to be normal miniature puppets that are lively autonomous creatures that awake at night and power down in the morning. This keeps the timeline of events intact and allows random encounters to tell this version of the story while playing to the best of their strengths. That may seem like too much of a stretch, but keep in mind that this musical may borrow aspects from the main FNAF timeline, but it doesn't abide by its rules. Case in point being how none of the characters are what their original counterparts have always been portrayed as. Mangle has been relegated to a one-time use mask and Balloon Boy is a literal toy car. Not to even mention how this timeline has 3 purple guys. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Our story of this universe begins with the very man that ignited the fires of the original Freddy's, Markiplier. Playing himself, of course. He rolls into this pizzeria for his first shift on the job and quickly dismisses the subsequent warnings from the phone guy. Not believing that the animatronics may be alive, he soon finds out the truth himself when the band on stage awake for the night, and they catch Mark by surprise through the cameras. Now knowing what he's gotten himself caught up with, Mark understandably thinks of the 3 as a threat and seals the doors. On the other side of the story, it turns out that this version of the Fazbear cast is more than friendly and welcoming, and they therefore interpret Mark's cry for help for them specifically, as opposed to from them. They enlist the help of Foxy, and once Mark learns of how the former is trying to sneak in through the air vents, he crafts up a custom mask to blend in as a fellow animatronic to save himself from what he believes are their nefarious clutches. The plan doesn't go accordingly, and Foxy instead tries to woo the mangled mess. A few trivial events later, the animatronics come to find out how Mark had been neglectful of the music box, which alerts the puppet. Distracted by the fifth animatronic's introduction, Mark inevitably fails to manage his power properly and it goes out.
Oh, he must be scared of the dark.
Maybe he'll cheer up if you sing him your song.
I wanna go home.
Now more petrified than ever, all the animatronics join hands in attempting to calm down their new security guard one last time. In typical random encounters fashion, the exact opposite of the intended plan comes to pass, and Mark cowers only further. That is until the clock strikes 6 AM and a mysterious stranger appears for his time of the shift.
Purple guy!
AJ! I'm AJ.
Are you here to kill me?
No, I'm here for the morning shift.
Morning shift. It's 6 a.m. I lived.
Yep.
The two exchange a normal conversation where Mark is reminded of how he has 4 more nights to cover this week. AJ himself is surprised by this. And Mark? Well, he isn't having any of it. This night does a great job at preparing us for the mood and themes of the musical, and I'd like to take a second to admire the tiny details showcased thus far before we continue with the nights. The introduction to the pizzeria was chock full of noteworthy references such as Bonnie's jump scare screen from the original game, Mango's mask being used to hide like the Freddy head from the sequel, the kitchen camera being given a reason to go offline.
Hooray, Freddy! The kitchen camera's dead! No.
The implementation of the FNAF theme menu system and hallucinatory jump scare, the presence of the puppet's music box, Freddy's face being tinted by blue as he sings a song.
Hi there, I'm Freddy. Wanna come and play?
And the unnerving introduction of Purple Guy. The first one at least. All this effort goes to show how everyone over at Random Encounters respect the source material and wish to pay as much homage to it as possible. It's equally impressive that they still managed to come up with their own fleshed out universe while having very little of the story crossover. Yeah, they have sequels and prequels to this musical out if you all didn't know, with a finale in the works. While I will be focusing on this one today, let me know if you all are interested in me covering the others too. Enough pandering though, let's carry on with night 2. This is where this adaptation of the Fazbear lore heads in a completely different direction. Mark isn't taking any chances with assuming the best intentions of the animatronics, and so there is no way in hell he's returning to Freddy's unarmed. Stalked and geared up the ass, Mark braces himself for the fight of his life in the office. Unbeknownst to him, the confused characters hide away in fear of Mark's aggressive attitude. Thus, no one dared to meet him. That is of course for the nightly janitor who nonchalantly walks by Mark's trigger-happy gaze. And just like that, several rounds are fired into the innocent bystander's chest.
You're not Foxy.
Mark is promptly arrested. He tries to explain his actions but is thought of as a lunatic and is driven away in a cop car. Although the incompetent cops leave him with the doors wide open and Mark is able to make a quick getaway, promptly dyeing his hair in hopes of increasing his chances of not getting caught as a wanted man. Yeah. This night was hella hectic, and it makes you wonder why the original night guard never did so at Freddy's anyway.
We lose more security guards this way.
The following day arrives and Phone Guy learns of the incident that had taken place that very night. In need of a new guard to cover the rest of the shifts, he contacts an ex-employee, Natewantstobattle himself. Pleading for his return, Nate obliges, but only because of the impending doom of his rent's pay. When Nate comes in for the night, it's revealed how he had worked at the restaurant 7 years ago, which lets the audience understand that he's familiar with this place. including the animatronics. While this would mean that no mishaps are bound to happen, a mysterious package that has been sent to the location is tampered with by Bonnie during his nightly roam. Something escapes from within and takes the bunny hostage, now aiming to attack Foxy next, but fails once the pirate sneaks into the vents once more. Nate catches wind of these events through the cameras and then watches as the green horror sets its sights on him. As Freddy and Chica rush over to Nate, he follows suit with standard protocol and moves to shut the doors, only to be taken aback when he realizes how this creature is already in the office.
That's weird. Usually that only happens when...
The monster attacks him, and despite Freddy's attempts to save his old acquaintance, it seems all is lost with Springtrap inching closer to killing Nate. The puppet tries to intervene but bites the dust at Springtrap's hand. It isn't until the aforementioned Foxy drops a vent plate from above that Springtrap is incapacitated.
You really can't go one night without popping out of something, can you?
The group collect themselves and discuss what to do about the unconscious animatronic before them. It turns out that only the puppet stood a chance at defeating that force of nature, and the crew don't have a way of protecting themselves now that he's dead. Bonnie interjects at that moment
Well, I know a guy.
by mentioning how there's a certain someone that they can go to for help, and Nate wastes no time in finding this original replacement of his. Why they all had to go through such great lengths to stop Springtrap and couldn't just, I don't know, stomp on him a few times right then and there is something beyond my pay grade. The gang drives off in Nate's car to find and recruit the help of Mark. Nate phones in at Freddy's to warn the arriving purple guy of the threat of Springtrap. AJ doesn't heed his warning and decides to work overtime.
On the other hand, a little overtime never killed anyone.
When the crew eventually reaches Mark's home, Nate instructs the animatronics to adventure into the house while he stays back in the car and deals with Springtrap back at the restaurant. How, you may ask? Well, through the Balloon Boy robot, of course. Again, I have no clue when he had the time to construct that bad boy, and something tells me that that was much harder than just, again, stomping Springtrap a few times. All that aside though, Mark deals with the intruders in his home while Nate deals with the intruder at Freddy's. During a chase scene, the connection to Balloon Boy's receiver antenna is lost, and he falls victim to Springtrap's decade-old mouth. Back inside, Freddy is taken hostage by Mark until Nate intervenes and calms him down.
He holds a special place in the hearts of children, so we should show him a little respect.
You the night shift? Are you with them?
No, I'm the Uber driver for a bunch of puppets.
What do you want?
His help is finally enlisted once he is convinced of how Springtrap's destruction could help clear his name and prove how he wasn't lying about a murderous animatronic. The band of 6 then embark on their quest. Since the 4th night is already coming to an end, Nate suggests they wait out the coming day and return once everyone has left. Everyone decides to lay low until their eventual face-off. The animatronics are sleeping or quote-unquote offline during the day, which supports my earlier argument of how they are just robotic organisms that awake at night only. Nate and Mark have a nice bonding moment where they lament about the impending doom.
How did you find out they were alive?
Same way you did.
With a machine gun?
No, I had a bazooka.
Hey, don't make fun of me. I killed the guy.
And soon enough, Night 5 rolls around. Upon entering, the group encounters Balloon Boy's corpse hanging on display in the office. Now all together, they come up with a plan to short-circuit Springtrap's faulty spring locks using a fire extinguisher. The plan isn't easy to execute though, since many of the designated fire extinguishers within the building are nowhere to be found, and the plan is set in motion where Mark attempts to
spring the trap,
while Nate guides the others as they navigate their way through the halls of Freddy's, alert of Springtrap's ever-lurking presence. Chica manages to find an intact fire extinguisher, but not before Springtrap finds her. A touch I appreciated here was how Chica is only spotted when she enters the kitchen, a blind spot within the camera system that she was responsible for. As she runs back to the office with Springtrap right behind her, the rest gather behind Mark as he prepares to capture the ravaging green husk and successfully does so as it enters through the doorway. Nate moves to douse the murder gremlin, but it backfires with the extinguisher malfunctioning instead. In a moment of shock, Nate is then hit on the back of his head and falls to reveal
Purple guy! Hey Jay, I'm not in a great mood, so drop the rope and release my murder gremlin.
It turns out that he was the reason as to how Springtrap was sent to this restaurant in the first place. AJ had originally thought it'd just scare everyone off, but didn't anticipate its serial killer tendencies. You see, AJ never intended to harm anyone but merely just wanted more hours for himself to spend working at Freddy's. Something that was cleverly hinted at in 2 prior nights before this one. The ex-night guards recount how they don't want to work here anyway, so AJ never had to go through all of this trouble in the first place. In a moment of clarity, all seems well as the characters come to neutral agreement. Even Springtrap is at ease given how it's established that it has a strong liking and kinship towards AJ.
Wow, weird. Everything turned out okay.
Just then though, the phone buzzes to life one last time, and with that, the walls burst open to reveal Phone Guy, the employer and manager of Freddy's and the man behind the slaughter.
Who are you? I'm your employer, Nate. I go by many names.
10 steps ahead of everyone, the whole slew of characters were brought together to him alone. It was all a grand manipulation. Phone Guy, William Afton, Scott Cawthon, Matpat, Dirtbag with a chainsaw.
Why, yes!
Actually, that one's my favorite.
William Cawthon's motivations aren't explained here, so while that's still a mystery, Freddy and the gang are still in danger. Given how the doors are sealed shut and they're all about to be disposed of just like AJ, a plan is desperately needed. Mark lets go of the rope holding Springtrap and the creature charges at its master's killer. The doors are taken care of through normal human means and the original 4 alongside Mark and Nate escape as Freddy Fazbear's burns to the ground, with the flames being muffled by William Afton's screams as he succumbs to his animatronic counterpart. We see the remains of all those we lost along the way and the screen fades to black. The ending leaves a cast-off on an open to interpretation note. Freddy and the gang are working diligently on opening a sister location, Mark is spending the rest of his days presumably retired as a free man, and Nate is on the hunt for a new job.
Without haunted animatronics or chainsaw maniacs? Sounds boring.
Well, I hear Freddy's is opening a sister location if you want to transfer.
I'm getting another call.
Alright, I'll talk to you later.
Yep, see ya.
Bye-bye!
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
He survived the fire. He swears to find Nate once he's released, but the threat isn't even completed before Nate tosses his phone into a nearby pond, uncaring of the madman and optimistic about his future, leaving this part of his life in the past. Oh yeah, and the budget of this series definitely went into the ending scene with Mark and his flame-throwing chainsaw. As I'd said before when Night 1 ended, it's hard not to think of this musical as a love letter to the original games. Even elements that weren't carried over still make an appearance through specifically placed jabs, such as the mention of a sister location and Golden Freddy being utilized to be Freddy's superhero alter ego. Even the obligatory Markiplier bye-bye is present, with it all capped off with William Afton escaping a burnt building. It's perfect. All that aside though, how does the musical hold up technically? Well, it isn't an Oscar-worthy showcase of excellent cinematography and lighting, I'll tell you that much. But you can tell the production quality had a tight budget. For something purely fun though, that gets a pass. The music is still more than watchable and entertaining at that. Although the most attractive part of a musical are the songs, and those seem to be the most underrated part of my analysis today. And that's just due to how there isn't much to critique about them. The songs are an absolute blast to listen to and they fit each night extremely well. Some are dark, others are light-hearted, and yet they all flow together seamlessly. They're bangers is what I'm getting at. My favorite was the one heard in Night 2, and I urge you all to give them a listen by watching the original video and supporting Random Encounters while you do so. All in all, the musical still holds up even after all this time, as long as you take it for what it is, a bunch of passionate people creating something uniquely entertaining. And honestly, the feeling I got when I saw Markiplier, Nate and Matpat all together was just astounding. These guys were the FNAF goats back then. Still are, but that was during their peak. And I know for a fact that Random Encounters made a bunch of children's childhoods by making this musical, and I can't fault anyone for that. This was a great watch. And now I'm interested to see what direction the story heads in, given how there's so many more musicals to look at in the FNAF universe. They even feature other iconic members of the FNAF community, with a return from Matpat himself. So I'm interested in reviewing those if you guys are down for that. Until then though, this was an extremely fun video to make, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing and leaving a comment down below. I love whatever you guys have to say regarding any of the topics I cover in my videos. In the meantime though, here are 2 videos that YouTube thinks that you'd enjoy. Give them a shot. I bet you won't be disappointed. Until next time, this has been Vexodus, and see ya.